Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive into today's story, drop your thoughts in the comments below. What lessons did you take away? And if you're new here, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Now let's get into it. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, casting a cold, indifferent glow across the Brooklyn family courtroom. To anyone else, it might have looked like just another case on a packed docket. But for Janelle Morgan, this was the end of everything, and maybe the start of something else. She sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap, pale knuckles pressed against each other like they were holding her together. It was July, but the air conditioning inside the courthouse left her shivering, or maybe it was just the sight of Adrian sitting across the table, perfectly relaxed in his tailored navy suit. His cufflinks gleamed. His scent, the very one she'd picked out for him last Christmas, lingered in the air, sharp and almost mocking. Adrian sat back like he owned the room, like this was all just a formality, as if the years they'd shared, and the wreckage he'd left behind, were little more than paperwork to sign and forget. The courtroom wasn't empty. On the benches, strangers whispered and shifted, waiting for their turn before the judge. A weary bailiff leaned against the wall, chewing his cheek. None of it registered for Janelle. Her eyes were locked on Adrian's hands, polished still, tapping the wood in a slow rhythm. Those were the same hands that once held hers during subway rides, over late-night pizza in their shoebox apartment in Flatbush. Now they were just symbols of everything she'd lost. The divorce papers had arrived a month ago, stuffed into a manila envelope, handed to her by some stranger at the door. She'd looked out the window and seen Adrian waiting in his idling BMW across the street. His face unreadable. No goodbye. No argument. Just one sentence through the cracked window. Good luck starting over with nothing. That was the last time he'd spoken to her, until now. The clerk called out. Docket number 2894. Morgan versus Morgan. She flinched hearing her married name. Her attorney, Camille Wright, placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Breathe, Janelle. Today's not his victory lap. Today we fight. The courtroom doors opened, and Judge Emmanuel Carver stepped through. His face was lined with experience, his eyes sharp despite the heavy bags beneath them. He took one long look at each party before settling in, his gaze lingering on Janelle a second longer. She felt like he could see right through her. Adrian's lawyer, Mr. Linwood, stood up, all smug confidence in a crisp gray suit. Your Honor, we're here to finalize the dissolution of marriage between my client, Mr. Adrian Morgan, and the respondent, Mrs. Janelle Morgan. The terms are clear. There exists a prenuptial agreement assigning all business assets and real estate to Mr. Morgan. Mrs. Morgan is entitled to a small settlement. His voice was polished and mechanical, like he'd said the same thing 100 times. Janelle's throat closed tight. Camille stood, her tone clear and sharp. Your Honor, we intend to challenge the validity and enforceability of the alleged prenuptial agreement. Not only did Mrs. Morgan play a pivotal role in the business's formation, but this document was never filed with the county, lacks notarization, and has no witness signature. We request the court consider the full scope of contributions made throughout the marriage. Adrian didn't react. He didn't look at Janelle. He stared ahead like none of this concerned him. The judge raised a hand. We'll begin with testimony. Mrs. Morgan, please stand. Her knees shook as she rose, but her voice, though soft, found strength as she spoke. When Adrian started his business, we had next to nothing. I worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. I built his first website. I helped land his earliest clients. I handled invoices, payroll, and taxes, things he didn't know how to do. I convinced our first investor to believe in him. I gave up my job offers, my own dreams, because I believed in ours. She turned her eyes to Adrian, stone-faced. I wasn't just there. I built this life with him. Mr. Linwood smirked. Yet your name was never on the business registration. No LLC documentation, no ownership stake. Correct, Janelle replied calmly. Because he said keeping it in his name protected us. And I trusted him. The judge jotted notes, his face unreadable. Adrian stood to respond, slow and deliberate. She helped, sure. But this business. It was my vision. My nights. My risk. She managed the home. She answered emails. But she didn't build this empire, I did. He slid a folder across the table. The prenup speaks for itself. Camille didn't miss a beat. This document isn't signed by any witness. Notarized. And, she said, sliding her own folder forward. Here's an official response from the clerk's office. There is no record of any prenup ever filed. A ripple moved through the courtroom. The judge held the paper to the light. His face didn't change, but the room did. Witnesses came next. Adrian's CFO gave a rehearsed statement, insisting Janelle was never part of the business side. Camille responded with a tidal wave of receipts, emails with Janelle negotiating contracts, her presence in internal Slack threads, launch photos, credit card statements showing joint funds used for inventory, and a framed photo of Janelle and Adrian shaking hands with their first investor. Then came Janelle's sister, Denise. I saw her break herself for that man. She believed in him more than he ever did. Their company started on our kitchen table with a laptop and coffee-stained dreams. She was the backbone. As the day dragged on, the tide began to turn. Adrian started to twitch. His jaw tight, lips pressed white. He fumbled when asked to prove the prenup had been filed. We have a copy. The original should have been somewhere. Camille dropped the final blow. Your Honor, this is the official statement from the New York County Clerk. No record. No signature. No notary. This agreement was never valid. Silence. Even the bailiff stood straighter. Adrian's face drained. The judge leaned back, his expression sharper now. Mr. Morgan, this is no minor oversight. A prenuptial agreement requires proper execution, notarization, and filing. Without it, it is not legally binding. Adrian tried to speak, but nothing came out. And then, finally, the verdict. The judge's voice carried the weight of finality. After reviewing all evidence, emails, financial records, testimony, and the invalidity of the prenuptial agreement, this court rules in favor of Mrs. Morgan. All business assets, properties, and holdings shall remain under her ownership. Mr. Morgan is entitled only to a portion of shared savings and one vehicle. The courtroom exhaled. Linwood opened his mouth to object, but the judge had already signed the final order. Adrian stared, stunned. The arrogance, the certainty, it all drained out of him like air from a punctured balloon. He sat motionless, blinking. His pen rolled off the table. He didn't reach for it. Janelle didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply sat, quiet, still, breathing in a truth that had taken her years to claim. Camille placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. It's over. Janelle stood slow and steady. She gathered her bag and glanced at Adrian one last time. Their eyes met. Nothing left between them now but silence. She turned and walked out. The last thing she heard was the click of the courtroom door shutting behind her, a sound like the closing of a chapter she never asked for, but finally finished on her terms. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a story that hits home. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and stay grounded.